Hey guys, good morning. I think Aravind is not joining, so yeah, let's just start. Have you guys done the functions practice? Are there any issues in these things? Are you guys feeling any difficulty in recursions? Teja, Sandhya, are you guys okay with these things?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are no doubts in the recursions as well, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Cool. Then let's just start with the classes and objects then, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Let me open the presentation for that. So I have been telling you guys that everything in Python is an object, right? So everything represents a particular class. Okay, so what is a class, right? A class is nothing but a blueprint for any object to be created. Okay, so it's more like, let's say you need to store some student details, right? How you will store student name, like maybe like this, student department, like this, right? If you want to store another student details, you will be doing student name 1 equal to another like this, let's say mech. Like similarly you will be storing all these things, right? If you have like thousands of students, you will be storing thousands of records like this. But let's say you are repeating the same names and all these things again and again and again, and you are also changing the variable name, right? So see what happens at some point of time, you might lose control of which particular variable has which student details, right? Because if you have like lot of data. So basically what developers has created some concept called classes. So these classes acts as a blueprint for all the objects that you have to create. Object is nothing but an instance. Okay, it's more like a variable which has lot of data. Okay, object is also a kind of data structure, we can say. Okay, so we already saw this particular type of integer gives you int class. Okay, type of any list will give you list class, right? So every particular thing in in Python, it may be an integer, it may be a string, it may be list or anything, any data type, right, is a object of one particular class. Okay, so that is the main motto of Python. Okay, everything in Python was written in classes, so to make them easier to work with, right? So similar to functions, how functions were being defined using def keyword, and you can just give some num like this. This is a function call, right? This is a function definition. Okay, similar to this, we have to define a class. Okay, if you are like manually writing some classes, you will be defining a class. Okay, with class keyword. Okay, you can give any name, but for classes we don't follow this particular snake casing. Okay, what we follow, we'll follow capital letters, I think Pascal casing. Okay, that is called Pascal casing, where you have, let's say, student data like this. Okay, first letter of each word will be capital. Okay, this is called a class. Okay, similarly how you write in a function, you can just define that like this. Okay, and pass. Okay, so this is how you define a class, right? Let me use VS Code, should be better. Let me just open up another file classes.py. Yeah, so basically class is nothing but a blueprint. Let's say I have defined student name empty pass. Okay, so this is nothing but a class. Okay, the class name is student name. Now this particular class, sorry, not student name, let's keep it student data, let's keep it generic. Okay, so this particular class acts as a blueprint for all our student details that we want to create. Okay, so for each student there would be some data, right? There would be a name, right? So by default you can give any name, it might be any name. Okay, maybe email, let's not take email, department, or maybe DOB, date of birth, right? You can take smaller caps based on your requirements. Okay, let's say 93. Like this you will create some sample data. Okay, now I need to create an object for this. Okay, an object of this particular student data. Okay, how you create an object? You will just define some student, let's say student 1 equal to student data, right? So you are just calling that particular class and storing that into the student 1 variable. Okay, now if you print this student 1 dot name, student 1 dot department, and student 1 dot DOB. Okay, so I'm not doing anything. So if you can see carefully, I'm just creating an object of this particular class, and I'm just printing that values that are present inside the class. Okay, so as I told you, it acts as a blueprint, so you can see the values are printing here. Okay, this particular class acts as a blueprint, and how many objects that you create will have this particular data, right? So I can also create one more, student 2 equal to same student data. Okay, I can just print the same thing with student 2 details as well, right? So you can see the data is coming for student 2 as well. So basically if you want to like create an object with some data, you are not repeating things, right? If you want to do simply you without classes, you would have to do like this. Okay, student, department, student name, all these things. But here I am simply creating number of objects with just one liners using the blueprint that I have created. Okay, this particular class is acting as a blueprint for this objects. Okay, so this is called a class and these are called objects of that particular class. Okay, sometimes people also call them as instances. Okay, objects and instances are both same, right? Don't get confused with these two words. Object is this, and whenever you are accessing this particular values, that is called an instant value. Okay, so it's I mean the meaning of both of them is similar. It's the place where we use those words, right? So if you want to call it an object, you will be using like this. If you want to call it as an instance, you will be using the same class name inside the class. Okay, let me show you that as well. Okay, now we have done this, but see, if I am creating number of objects, all of those are getting the same data, right? I am not able to give the new data to those values. Okay, so but ideally this would not be the real life scenario, right? In real life scenario, you will have multiple students with different names and date of births, DOBs, everything, departments, everything. So you need to give data to the class so that it will automatically stores your data, right? So for that particular purpose, we have one method called init. Okay, So there is a self keyword which represents that particular instance. Okay, self, you will have to like take name, department and date of birth. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll just take self dot name equal to name, self dot department equal to department, self dot date of birth equal to date of birth. Okay, so I just defined one more method. Yeah, self represents this particular instance. I told you, right? Instance and objects. So objects, we call these things our objects whenever we are doing it here. Okay, whenever we are calling that particular class, this becomes an object, and when this particular object comes to this particular place, this is called instance. Okay, and self is nothing but an instance. Okay, whatever the instance that you are representing, that object. Okay, and self can only be used for any class. Okay, it cannot be used for any other data types or functions or all. Okay, so self represents an instance of that particular class. Okay, let me tell you that as well. So here I am taking student 1 and student 2. So rather than directly giving here, I can give my own names here. Okay, so second one would be department, so let's say ECE and random date of birth, right? Okay, now if I do this, okay, now see, whenever I'm creating the instance, okay, that is called instantiation. Okay, whenever I'm creating an object for this particular class, this init method will automatically gets called. Okay, init method will every time will automatically gets called whenever I'm just calling this student data. Okay, and whatever the arguments, whatever the parameters that I'm passing into the class will directly go to init method. Okay, fine. So this Gopal goes to name, this ECE goes to department, and the date of birth goes to DOB. Fine. What I am doing, this self dot name represents this. Okay, name, department and DOB that we have defined, but for this particular object. Okay, see, if I was not giving any of these things, what it would happen, it will directly take name equal to this, name department equal to this, DOB equal to this for both the objects, right? So to override those things, okay, I am creating init method. Init is all default method. Okay, we can just override these things. So here self dot name means this particular property, these are called attributes or properties, you can call them whatever you want. Okay, these are called properties for objects. Okay, so this particular name property of student, I am overwriting with whatever the name that I am sending in. Okay, so I am sending this name to here, and self dot name represents this. I am just overriding that particular values only for this student. Okay, if I do for second student will be different. Okay, for second student, this value will be overriding this value. Okay, let me run this and you can see the difference, right? So initially I was getting same data for both of them, but now I am getting whatever the data that I am passing in. Okay, I am manually passing the data. This goes to init method, and we are overriding the original values. Okay, whatever the values that we have, we are overriding those values, original values, and we are getting the data, right? Now if you just do student 3 equal to student data, and let's say you are not providing these values, right? And if you try to run this, it will throw you error, because init method has 3 positional arguments, name, department and DOB, but you are not passing them, right? We need to pass 3, but you are not passing them, right? Sometimes what you want, if you are not giving any data, you want to take the default original values, whatever the values that we already have. Got it? So here we are overriding things because we need this data to be populated for student. Okay, let's say I don't want to populate any data to student. Okay, I want to use original values only. Then how to handle that particular scenarios when you are not giving anything, you will be taking default keyword arguments. Okay, here I'll take everything as none here basically means nothing, empty, and I'll only override these values if name, I need to write it here. Okay, if name, then only I am overriding things. Okay, if department, then only I am overriding things. If DOB, then only I am overriding DOB, right? So if I'm not passing things, so which means I'm not overriding things as well, so which means I have my old data as it is, right? So whatever the original data I have, it will be taken by default if you are not passing things. If you want to pass things, then you can directly pass using like this and it will work as well. So you can run this and see. So for first two, whatever the data that I am passing in is getting for the students. Okay, but student 3, since I am not passing any values, it will take the default values, right? Let's say department is same. Okay, department is same, I just want to override name. Okay, now you can just use keyword arguments here as well. Okay, name would be, let's say, Mark, and you will also have to like change DOB, date of birth would be 01/01/1996. Let's say I want to give only these two, but the department would be by default CSC, right? So you can also do that. Now you can check, you can see name and date of birth has been changed, but CSC is being taken directly from the original values, right? So in this way, see, you are just controlling how your data has to get populated, right? So if you want to give 3 values, it will take 3 values. Okay, if you don't want to give anything, it will take default values. If you are giving 1 or 2, you are I mean whatever the values that you want to override, you are only giving those values, then only those values are getting overridden and the rest of the values are taken from the original values, right? So this is how you create objects based on your requirements. Okay, see, class name is same, we are still using the same class name. Okay, student data and same properties and same method, but based on our requirements, we want to make sure that everything works. Okay, so even if you don't give anything, it is working. If you give all the values, it is working. If you give only partial values, 1 or 2 values, then also it is working, right? This is how you create a class and object. Okay, so these are called properties. Okay, or attributes, some people call them attributes, some people call them properties. Okay,
What?
and we have defined some methods, these are called methods. Okay, so this is methods, this is already an inbuilt method, we are just overriding that particular method, right? So init method, whenever you are just defining this class, it will call. Yeah,
Sir, what is the purpose of using the init method, sir?
so init method is used whenever you are just calling this one. No, init method is used to initialize things, right? So init method is already there, you are just overriding that particular method. Okay, how init method works, whenever you are calling this class, okay, you are calling this class, this will automatically gets called. Okay, that is why it is called init. Okay, initializing the object. Okay, so whenever we are calling a class, this particular
Every time when we use the init method, the self method should be used, sir.
self keyword should be used whenever you are defining some methods inside this. Okay, like let's say I need to define okay, self method has to be there. Whatever the methods that I am defining inside my class, okay, these are all the methods inside my class, right? These are all the functions that are inside my class. Okay, not outside the block. Okay, if it was like this, then I don't have to give any self or something like that. Okay, but this is inside my class, that's why I need to give self keyword. Okay, self keyword is nothing but which represents this particular object instance. Okay, fine. I'll also tell you the difference between function and a method. So we saw some function, right? Some function, whenever you pass any iterable, it will give you some of those values, right? But we had some methods, right? 1 comma 2 comma 3, let's say, is an array. We have a dot append of 4. Okay, sum is called a function, append is called a method. Okay, because sum is a function which works for all the iterable items. Okay, it can be worked, but append is a method. Okay, append is a method for that particular list class. Okay, it's not for any other classes. This is called a method. Okay, now I think I already showed you how to check these values. If you can go to list particular method, you can see list class, you can see append method, right? So this is inbuilt code, okay, which is already written in Python. Okay, this is our code, this is inbuilt code. So you can see this is a list class. When you go into list class, you can see there is append method, okay, which is written inside your class. Okay, so this append method has self keyword, right? So this self is nothing but your a, okay, your list object. Here a is nothing but a list object, right? You are creating an object of that particular list class, right? So this a will go into self keyword. Okay, and whatever the values that you are giving object, which is here 4, will go to that place. Fine. So this is how classes and method works, right? Now so we have looked into how to initialize the data, okay, and also how to override the default values, keep them override. Now you can create some more methods and you can call them as well. Okay, let's say I want to print something, print self dot name. Okay, so as I told you, self is a object, particular object, whichever you are calling. You don't have to return anything, you can just write a return statement. Okay, here also you can just write return statement. Okay, now let's say I am not printing here, you can just see I am just calling student1 dot get name. Okay, I am just calling this particular method. Okay, so if whenever I am calling a method, I will be using that particular object dot that method name, and if it was a function, I would be directly calling this, right? So now whenever I run this, you can see for student1 the name is Gopal, and whenever I am calling student1 dot get name, this student1 goes to self and I am printing self dot name, which is nothing but student1 dot name, right? You understood now how self word is being used, guys?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sandhya, any doubts till now? Guys, you need to be more proactive on this. Sandhya, you are on mute if you are speaking. Have you understood till now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you understood how self keyword works, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you can call this methods as well. Okay, you can define number of methods, you can call those methods as well. Okay, so this is the basic structure of a class. Okay, this is the class name. You have properties, you can define them, you can give them default values. Okay, and you have this init method, which is to initialize these values. Okay, or which is used to initialize the default, override the default values, or you can also keep the original values based on your requirements. Okay, And we can also have the custom methods. Okay, you can create numerous methods like this. Okay, you can have multiple methods, you can call them using that particular object that you have created for the class. Okay, so class is nothing but a blueprint. So all these things, right, all these methods, all these properties will be available for each and every object that you create from the class, right? So this is how it works. Okay, this is how the classes works. Now let's just go through PPT once. So yeah, Python is an object oriented programming language. So what is object oriented programming language? Basically everything works as an object in the programming language. Okay, the whole program, the whole language is written using these OOPS concepts. Okay, object oriented programming concepts. So almost everything in Python is an object with its properties and methods. Okay, so these are called as properties, these are called as methods. Okay, a class is like an object constructor or a blueprint for creating objects. Okay, whenever you just define this and whenever you create an object, this particular value will be available for that object. Fine. And object is also called as an instance at the time of operation. Okay, in this point these things are called as objects, and at this point where we are using self, we call it as instance. Okay, basically there is no difference between object and instance, but the way we call at each position is different. Okay, here we call it as object, here we call it as instance. Just remember that. Okay, now this is init function. So init function is basically is used to create that particular object. Okay, so to understand the meaning of classes, this is a init method. Okay, which is already a built-in. Init is always executed when the class is being initiated. Okay, initiated means here we are just calling that particular class, right, with some data or even without some data. Okay, then this init method will be called. Okay, every time whenever you are just initializing this class, okay, that particular method will be called. Fine. Now we using this init method we can assign some properties. Okay, properties are nothing but these values, or if you want to do any operations you can do them, right? So this is the simple example similar to what we have learnt here. Okay, now we have object methods. Okay, these things are called methods. Okay, so you can define them, you can call them using that particular object. Okay, you can call them using student2 dot get name as well, because this this method will be available to all the objects. Fine, you can see that we have defined it with ready, this student2, and whenever I am trying to get student2 dot get name, I am getting my value. Fine, so this is how object methods works. Okay, and self keyword is nothing but a reference to that particular object, which is also called as an instance here. Okay, this is just this. Okay, if I am calling this or this, right, so this self keyword represents that particular object from which we are calling the method. Okay, so self has all the values, all the properties that this particular object has. We can just access them like this, right? So you can directly use it to access the variables, you can also access the methods, all these things, right? Without self it is not possible for you to do. Okay, now we have delete keyword, which is used to delete any object or its properties. Okay, now let's say I am accessing student dot get name here. Okay, let me just delete student1 dot name property. Okay, if I delete this name property here, this student1 dot get name, which is accessing the name, should throw you the error, right? So you can see I removed that student1 dot name. Okay, that property I deleted, and now my get name, rather than giving Gopal, it is giving me Venu, which is my default value, right? Got it? How to delete the objects. You can also delete the whole object like this, okay, using the same delete keyword. Okay, so you can see now student 1 is not defined, it's showing. Okay, so since I deleted the whole student 1, this is not working properly, right? So delete keyword can be used to delete any property or the deleting the whole object as well, right? So you can delete any property or any whole object. Fine. Okay, we'll discuss about OOPS concepts tomorrow or Monday, because those are like very important concepts. Now so till now, any doubts? Are you guys clear till now? Okay. So in previous class I told you that we'll be discussing 4 different built-in functions when we are discussing about the classes, right? So in functions I told you that we'll be discussing these things while we are discussing about the classes. Okay, this get attribute, set attribute, has attribute and delete attribute. Okay, we'll discuss all these 4 things now. Okay, so now see, we have created some objects. Okay, let me delete this, we don't want that. Okay, see, now I am deleting student1 dot name. Okay, student1 dot name, which is present there, that's why it is directly deleting. Okay, let's say I need to delete student1 dot last name. Okay, is last name present for the student object? No, right? So this object is not there at all. Okay, now if I try to run this, it will throw me that last name attribute is not present, right? And you can't remember all the attributes that are present or not, right? So basically this delete keyword will throw you some errors when you are accessing attributes which are not present with you. Okay, so for that particular purpose we have some methods. Okay, we have couple of methods, couple of functions that I'll show you. Okay, first one is get attribute. Okay, get attribute student1, and you can just give the value name, right? So it has to be in quotation marks. Okay, so if you do this, sorry, you will have to print. Okay, if I print this, right, you can see get attribute is nothing but just printing the particular value, right? Getting student1 and getting the name of that particular student1. Okay, if I do the same thing with last name, it will give me error because student data has no attribute last name. Okay, so for that what you can do, you can just give default value. Okay, default value you can give as no value. Okay, so if I do this, you can see it is printing me no value. So get attribute is nothing but gives get attribute is used to get the value like student dot name. Rather than directly calling student dot name, what we will do, we will use get attribute function and we will pass the class name, sorry, object, whatever the object we have, and we will pass the attribute that we want to fetch. Attribute is nothing but a property. Okay, don't get confused. Whatever the attribute name that we want to pass. Okay, if this attribute is present in the object, it will give you the value. If not, it will throw you the error. So to avoid that errors, we can also give you a default value, right? So it will check if this last name present in student1 or not. Okay, so in student we don't have last name, that's why we are getting the default value, right? So that is what get attribute is used. Okay, now similar to get attribute, we also have has attribute. Okay, has attribute, which will check if that attribute exists or not. Okay, so here we are checking if that student has this last name property or not. Okay, it will just give you true or false. Okay, it is giving me false, right? Let me uncomment this, all these things, it's getting confused. Okay, so now you can see it is giving me false, right, because last name is not present. Okay, if I do name, simple name, it is giving me true because name attribute is present with this object. Okay, that is what has attribute represents. And we have get attribute. Now you can see that last name is not present, that's why we are getting no value. Okay, so in between these, what you can do, you can also set attribute. Okay, even though that this particular student class does not have last name, what you can do, you can manually set last name attribute for any student value. Okay, here you can set last name as, let's say, George, right? So what here you are doing, for this particular object you are setting last name attribute with value George. Okay, now we are getting that attribute last name. Since before we didn't have any value, any attribute called last name, we are giving us, it is giving us no value. Okay, now if you run this, you can see it is giving me George. Okay, and set attribute will not have any output, that's why it is showing you none, right? So you don't have to like print anything from this because it will not give you any output. It will just set last name attribute to object. Okay, so basically has attribute is used to
Here set attribute.
set attribute.
No. Set attribute and get attribute is almost same, okay?
No, get attribute is used to
For setting the
no, Tejavardhan. So get attribute used to fetch the values. See, let me just comment this. Okay, see, if I am doing this, it is giving me you don't need this as well. Okay, it is giving me no value, right? Okay, now if I try here student 1 dot last name. Okay, so this particular value is not being set to last name. Okay, we are not setting here. Okay, we are trying to get last name if it is there. Okay, if it is not there, we are just giving output as a no value. Okay, but we are not setting it. Okay, if you run this, it will still throw you error because student data does not have any attribute called last name, right? Because we haven't set this attribute yet. Okay, so get attribute, what it does, it will just fetch this attribute, okay, last name attribute for the student object. Since it is not there, we are just giving you no value. Okay, this is default value, that's it. Okay, this is not actually setting the value to this attribute. Okay, but set attribute is not like that. See, set attribute, what it does, we are setting this last name as Georgie. Okay, now if I print this, it will not throw you any error. Okay, we are just printing that value last name. You got the difference between set and get attribute?
correct.
So set attribute is nothing but setting some values to the last name, right? But get attribute will not set any values, it will just check if last name is present. Okay, if last name is present, then it will give me student 1 dot last name. If it is not present, it will just give me no value, whatever the default value that I am taking from here. Okay, it will just give me that value. Okay, but it will not set any attribute values. Fine. So we have discussed set attribute, get attributes, has attribute. Now we have one more thing called delete attribute. Okay, the same thing, student 1, you can just give the attribute name. Okay, you can just run this, you can see. Now you can print it again, it will throw you error because student data has no attribute last name. Okay, we are setting the last attribute, we are printing the values, and then we are also deleting that attribute. Okay, so why we need to delete some attributes in real life scenarios? Sometimes we will set some manual attributes, and if we don't want them, we will delete them as well. Okay, so that is why we use this delete attributes, right? So yeah, these are the 4 keywords, 4 functions. Has attribute will just check if that attribute is present or not. Set attribute will set any value that you are giving into that attribute of that object. Okay, see, it will only set attribute to that particular object, okay, not to the class. Okay, so if you are doing this and if you try to access student2 dot last name, okay, here we are setting for student1 and I'm trying to access student2, it will still throw you the error, student data has not attribute. Okay, so it will only set for one particular object. Okay, now we can use get attribute to get the values. If the value is not there, you can also give the default value. Okay, and we have delete attribute. Delete attribute is nothing but to delete any attributes. Okay, this is equivalent to del student1 dot last name. Okay, this and this are exactly same, it's just that delete attribute is kind of a function and delete is a keyword, that's it. Okay, both can be used at any point of time. Fine. So yeah, this is all about classes, properties, methods and functions to manipulate the attributes. Okay, yeah, cool. Then this is all about classes, basic classes structure. Okay, we have OOPS concepts. Okay, we have 4 OOPS concepts. Okay, one is abstraction, one is inheritance, one is polymorphism, and we have encapsulation. Okay, so we'll be discussing these 4 concepts from Monday. These are very much important OOPS concepts, okay, which will be very much useful while you are writing some scripts or maybe working in Django, right? So OOPS concepts are very useful. Okay, till now just practice these classes, how classes works, how to do some data. Okay, how to have these things and all, right? Let me just create a practice test as well. I think I have already done that. Let me just check once. Okay, for classes it's not there. Okay, create employee class with name, date of birth, department, salary and date of joining, right? Create 10 employee details or objects using init methods. Fine. Then try using has attribute, delete attribute, get attribute and set attribute functions on those employees, right? Also create custom class methods to print 10% of the salary of employee. Okay, so here what you have to do, these all things are almost familiar for you, and this is the new one where you will have to write a custom method. This is my custom method, right? Similar to this, you will have to write a custom method, and in that particular custom method you will have to return 10% of the salary of that employee. Okay, how much would be that 10% of that employee, right? That you will have to return. Okay, or maybe print. Okay, that you will have to work on. Okay, so try doing all these things. Okay, it would be better for you to, I mean, practice these things now itself, because once we start abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism and encapsulation, you would feel difficulty if you don't understand the class basics. Fine. So yeah, try practicing these things. Okay, I hope you are doing all the practice tests, because see, practice, if you are not practicing, I can't help you. Okay, once we start with Django web application, whatever we have learned till now we will be using all these things. Okay, classes, functions, recursive functions. Fine. So without these basic concepts, you can't understand any web application structure, right? So you need to get familiar with all these things. If you have any doubts, if you feel there are any problems, okay, let me know in the classes. We'll discuss multiple times. Okay, we can discuss all the things multiple times. Okay, don't be shy for asking the things, right? Cool then. Are you guys have any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, cool then. Try to complete this task, okay, by Monday. We'll start with the oops concepts from Monday onwards. Okay, cool then. You guys can drop off.